Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Shaman Stories Podcast. Today with me, I have Barry Goddard. He's the author of the new book that's coming out soon, or hopefully be out soon before this gets released. But the book is called Chaos Shamanism. Thanks for being here today, Barry.
Thank you. And it's subtitled Reclaiming Your Indigenous Soul.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Why don't you let people know a little bit about what you do today, and then we'll get into the book.
Yes. Okay. Well, a large part of what I do is actually astrology readings. And the connection there with shamanism, I got this off someone who was speaking to an African medicine man. And they said, I'm an astrologer. And he goes, your spirits are in the sky. Yeah. I thought, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, let's say half my spirits are in the sky. Yeah. And they speak through you. It's a connection to the sky. So that's what I kind of tend to do, online with people. But what I mainly tend to write is shamanism. And I walk a lot on Dartmoor, which is a wilderness area near me. And that just really connects me. And I have a medicine wheel in my garden, and I do pipe ceremonies occasionally, and I pray and all of that. So that's a little bit about me. And I live in Devon in the United Kingdom.
Nice.
And I hope you can all understand my accent.
Oh yeah, I grew up watching British TV, so for me, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But so what got you into that? Like, where did you start? Was your family working with these, the spirits or astrology or
No,
shamanism as a whole? Or
I can claim no ancestral inheritance apart from maybe my mother. I'd never thought of it like that. But my mother grew up in the west of Ireland, and she grew up on a farm. There was 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. This was like in the 30s. And she used to wander off on her own. She spent her whole life wandering off on her own when she could. And she'd go down to the local woods. And as she told me, she'd talk to the little people. And she gave me quite a detailed description once of how old they were, what their names were, what they were wearing, etc., etc. And then the next time I asked her, I wanted to firm a few things up. I asked her about it. And she goes, did I say that? And that's kind of the nature of sorry, someone just sent me a photo on WhatsApp. It's probably, these interruptions are always significant, but I'll ignore it for now.
Okay.
But that's the nature of like the spirit realm, if you like, is that, or the fairy realm, yeah, is that we can't pin it down. Yeah. And that's one of the great teachings we get out of shamanism, because we live in this very literal culture. Yeah. Everything's got to be concrete. Everything's got to have evidence. Everything's got to have almost an equation behind it to be real. Yeah. And these fairies, it's like, well, something was definitely there. I definitely saw it, but it's not there now. Yeah. And it's like that with the spirits and the spirit helpers. If you try and do that for them, they won't be pinned down. So she was always she was half not in this world really. And sometimes she could be inspired and insightful, but other times it was just doolally. So I think that's the nearest I can lay claim to an ancestral inheritance. But really, I came to the shamanic path almost despite everything else. I came to it through what you might call the shamanic illness, if that isn't bigging it up too much. Now, the shamanic illness is something that you find in the Far East amongst the sort of people who are called to be a shaman. And stereotypically, it's like they'll get ill. Yeah. Their knife no longer works. They may even die. Yeah. It gets really serious. And they start to get better once they yield to the spirits. Once they go, okay, you're in charge, yeah? Because they don't necessarily want to be a shaman. I mean, they've still got to earn a living. It's not like being a priest over here where the congregation supports you. They've got to earn a living. They've got a family. They've got the games of cards they play or whatever they do. And they've got to do the healing on top. So, they're reluctant, but also I think the real reluctance is it's more existential. Yeah, it's threatening because when you're a shaman, when you're a healer, when you're a medicine person, you don't live within the easy certainties that most of us live. I mean, most of us have got a fairly simple view of how the world works. Well, you had the Big Bang, then you had evolution. Yeah, 1,000 years ago, well, you got heaven and hell, you got God, and this is what's good and this is what's bad. It's all these simple certainties in a universe that's actually deeply mysterious. Yeah, like the fairies I began with. Yeah, it can't be pinned down. And that's very uncomfortable for most people. And that'd be very uncomfortable for your ordinary person who's called to be a shaman, but he's called into this uncertain universe. And the reason we need to be able to live in that uncertainty from the point of view of the spirits is so that they can do their work, so that we're not in the way with our big ego going, I believe this and this is how things are. That's just a block to their influence and the healing work that they want to be able to do. So, yeah, in the end, and so in a way, instead of your authority being the beliefs and ceremonies of your people, it's not that you turn against them, but you have a deeper authority, which is this direct connection to spirit. And it's beautiful, it's ecstatic, it's invigorating, but it's also very scary if you want simple certainties. So they get ill, and hopefully they yield, but the spirit will kill you. Yeah, potentially, because the spirit is really serious about us living this calling, and it's willing to risk our life in order to insist on it. Life is ruthless in its continual renewing and continuing moving forward, and that can often be what makes us ill. Is when we get stuck. Yeah, we don't want to move forward, and then we get cancer. Yeah, and then maybe we can listen. So, I'm sort of answering your question about my how I came to this. It was, if you like, through the shamanic illness. Back in my early 30s, I've been following Buddhism for many years in a full-time kind of way, living in Buddhist communities, learning the teachings, practicing them. But it was too cerebral. Yeah. It's like the way the Buddhist path worked, or the particular form of it, 'cause I don't want to sort of say it applies to all Buddhism, is that you take a particular teaching like impermanence, yeah, or no self, yeah, and you understand it, and then you apply it to the rest of your being. Yeah. So it's a bit like the head knows best, and the rest has to follow suit. And that model, top down, made me ill. And also because the teacher, I mean, he was an original thinker. I learnt a lot from him, but he needed everyone to think like he did. And eventually, the limitations of that, my whole being, that also made me ill. My being was ready to move on from that first stage where you just follow a teacher. And a good teacher, of course, sees that and helps you move on. A teacher who's not so good tries to keep you, which is what he was trying to do. So I had to learn to listen in a very different way right through my 30s. And instead of, because I got a kind of fatigue, a chronic fatigue, they called it. Well, it wasn't chronic, but that's what they called it. The doctors had to think of something. But what it was it's like the plug had been pulled. I had no energy to do anything unless I listened to this very different place in myself that was like ambrosia, that was like nectar. And it was shamanism. The word shamanism was bouncing around in my head, and I didn't really know what it meant, but it intrigued me. And the same with astrology, because that's similarly, it's something speaking from somewhere else. Now, here was the big thing, is that I come into shamanism, and for people who are shamanic, the earth herself is sacred, right? Now, for religions can easily put down nature. Yeah. They look down on nature. Yeah. And the Buddhism I was in was the same. That this world, well, it's a place of suffering, and you will be reborn here until you are enlightened, and you're trying to become free of rebirth. Now, for me, that's the wrong way round. It's this place, it's a deep joy, it's a privilege, it's such a deep, rich existence being here. If you seize hold of it, it's not something you want to transcend. Yeah. It's something you want to enter. So the shamanic path is about incarnation. It's about bringing spirit into matter, into the body. Whereas for a transcendent religion, it's about rising above mere nature. I don't know if you ever watched Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot from him. There's a lot I get that is, you know, I've really benefited from. But there's always a kind of constriction I feel around him as well. And he summed it up about 18 months ago. He was having this earnest theological discussion, and he announces God is not in nature. I thought, there it is. That's where I'm feeling uncomfortable, yeah? Because that, in a way, is the problem with the whole of Western civilization. God is no longer in nature, yeah? We look down on the natural world, whereas the natural world is our mother. So, um, so the more I listened to that during my 30s, the more I got well again. I went on shamanic courses and things like that, but I've learned to become bottom up instead of top down. I listen to what's coming up from within, and what comes up within me, well, we're connected to everything. It comes up from the whole earth. It comes up from the whole universe. We're not separate. When we die, we remember that we're the rocks, we're the trees, we're the flowers, we become everything. We remember that we're everything again. And that is the sacred. The sacred being that which is of highest value to us. I mean, sacred is easily I mean, I know one shamanic teacher, he never uses the word sacred because he's trying to be beyond religion. And I'm going, no, we need it. It's that which has highest value for us. And that is in the natural world. That is in rocks. They are alive too.
Yeah, no, I agree totally with everything you just said. I and even with the shamanic illness, like, in my own experience, it wasn't necessarily me getting physically sick, but my whole world was falling apart, right? My job was a mess. My wife and I were about to have a divorce. Like, all of these things were just suddenly going wrong. And then the
Yes.
same thing, shamanism just kept showing up for me. And I'm like, what is this? I don't understand. Amazon recommended reading. I was starting to get books on shamanism and I had never looked it up before. Facebook ads for Udemy courses on shamanism were showing up for me. All these random things. And finally, it was like, all right, let me get a book and see what this is about. And then same thing. It shifted my whole reality of everything. It was like, oh no,
Yes.
there are spirits. There is the earth. We can learn from the trees. We can learn from the stone people. We can learn from the animals. We need to, be an Aini and find balance within everything. And once you get to that point, everything just shifted, and it's like none of this other stuff matters because it's not important.
Yeah. 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 And of course, you've got the Native American connection over where you are,
Mm.
haven't you? So have you, do you feel a connection with what they do?
I did most of my training with the South American lineage, and then I've
All
done
right.
some training with an African shaman with some more specific stuff. But we use the medicine wheel. It's just different, archetypes, different animals than what they have at some of the local tribes near me. But we do have a lot of tribes in this area.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think that's one of the, I mean, I call my book Chaos Shamanism, and you're probably going to ask me about what I mean by the chaos. So, but one of its meanings is that we are in this cultural melting pot. Is there a cockerel crowing in the background?
Yeah, sorry, I got chickens running around.
No, that's okay. I think that's great. Let's have the animal world with us. Let's have the cockerels. I was born in the year of the rooster, so that's fine. Um, so, so the cockerel's been honoured. Um, so yeah, we no longer have a kind of common mythology,
Mhm.
yeah, that we're all agreed upon, and that's got some huge disadvantages, but it's also got advantages as well. I mean, there is. Do you know Yeats's poem, "The Second Coming"?
I've read it, I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yes. Well, he wrote it in 19 in the wake of the First World War, but really it's addressing the decline of Christianity in the West. And it's that line, things fall apart. Yeah. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Yeah. And then he concludes with those lines that Joni Mitchell put in her song. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. So he's talking about the false religions like communism that arose in the wake of a genuine sense of the sacred. Because with
Mhm.
communism, it's like they tried to bring heaven down to earth. I just got that out of the Brothers Karamazov. Yeah. And that was Dostoevsky writing in the 1800s. He saw it then. Yeah. So, um, yes. So, on an existential level, there's mere anarchy, but when you do have a tradition, when you do have a common mythology, people get rigid about that, and you don't have the freedom to explore. You become a heretic very easily. So we do have that freedom to explore. We can draw from South American shamanism. We can have a bit of astrology here. We can use the medicine wheel, yeah? But I don't mean that in a superficial way. It's like we're free to answer the genuine callings. Yeah, so I have the medicine wheel and I have Western astrology. God knows why. It's just what deeply appeals to me. So that's why I follow it. But I think more than that, there is a so yes, the chaos means we can, you know, be selective within this melting pot, choose what really works for us. We don't have to be doctrinaire, dogmatic. But on the other hand, there can be a lack of depth in that. And also, um, well, the chaos primarily I use in the Greek sense. It's what was there before the universe began, the primordial chaos, the primordial inchoate non-substance, if you like. And in a way, that is the same as the great mystery. It's the great mystery out of which we heal. It's the great mystery out of which we have insight. It's the great mystery out of which we live, because life is this continual uprush within us. Yeah. And we just live it. But we have no idea where it comes from. It is just there. And so if you live close to the chaos, you're living close to the great mystery. And that's what any tradition should do. Yeah. It's a pointer. Any great story, any great myth is a pointer to that mystery behind it that really we know nothing. And I wanted to come back to my own shamanic illness. I had something to say there and I've forgotten what it is. I'll probably remember what it is in a minute, because I get off on one. As you can see, there's almost like too much to say. That's why I said you need to rein me in sometimes. So, 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 so yes, we have no common mythology, yes, but we need to get back. It gives us the opportunity. This is where I wanted to go. It gives us the opportunity to get back to the indigenous mindset, indigeneity, which is rather a clumsy technical term. But for me, that's what shamanism's about. For me, that's what this podcast is essentially about. It's about the great project we have of reclaiming our indigenousness. That's what shamanism is about for me. Now, shamanism is used in two different ways, and you can see endless arguments about it on Facebook. And it all comes out of academia, because it was academia like 120 years ago that invented the term shamanism. It's all documented in this book called The Beauty of the Primitive by a Russian academic. I quote him in the book. He lives in America now, but it's the history of Western shamanism, which of course is fascinating. Yeah? But this term shamanism was originally created to describe the practices and the work with spirits of the Far Eastern shamans in academia. But then in academia, it also started to be used to mean indigenous ways and practices, etc., worldwide. Yeah. So it is used in both senses. I prefer to use it in the latter sense. I don't personally think there's a right way and a wrong way, and I can see that it can be used in both ways. So when I talk about shamanism as the grand project of reclaiming indigenousness, yeah, it's the second meaning I mean. Yeah. And now I was reading a book by a guy about shamanism, and he began by emphasizing how remote we are from the indigenous mindset, and how us moderns have no idea what it's about. Yeah. Now, I think that's disempowering, and I think it's untrue. There's a half truth in it. Yeah. We are to some extent remote from it. Yeah. But it's there in us. And I say, no, this is how you find it. You just go out into nature and you appreciate its beauty. That is where shamanism begins. Yeah? It's that sense of belonging to nature. That's that beauty that you experience. Yeah. Once you experience the beauty of it, you feel part of it. And here's another thing. Sometimes you will be awed by nature. You will encounter a huge rock or an ancient tree. Yeah. That will awe you. It's bigger than you. And that's a great restorative medicine for our natural human tendency to put ourselves above nature. Yeah. We get proud, we lack humility. And these huge rocks and ancient trees, well, the vast sky, the vast ocean, anything that's, or a mountain, anything that's bigger than us, yeah, it reminds us of our place in things. Yeah. And then we can see straight. Because if you haven't got humility, you can't see straight. You can't see anything for what it is. You're always trying to see everything in reference to yourself and how great you are. And we do that as humans. We've always done that as humans. That's why I used to have a Chippewa Cree guy used to come and stay with me when I used to live in Glastonbury, which is a sort of hippie central of England. Um, uh, I had a house. I'd moved into a house and I realized it's big enough to hold public events. And I just had this prayer in my heart. I want an actual traditionally trained teacher to come my way, not a teacher of Western shamanism. And within 3 weeks, I got a phone call. Yeah. I've got this guy and he's looking for places to do teachings and sweat lodges and his Chippewa Cree. There it was. Because you see, that's the thing about, I'm going all over the place, digressing. I could talk about prayer now, but remind me to talk about prayer later because that's how
Okay.
it works. It's about things that in your heart will manifest, but never in a way you expect. So he turned up and I can't remember what it was I was going to say about him. Ah, blimey. I get
Ye
enthusiastic about stuff and I forget where I was.
Well, you were
Um,
talking about how you were hoping to get a
yeah,
traditionally trained person, and then 3 weeks
yeah,
later, you got a phone call for someone looking
yeah,
for a place to stay.
yeah. And I was talking about indigenousness
Mhm.
and I can't quite remember what the connection was with what I was saying, but we'll come to it. I mean, the way I love to learn from him is we would talk metaphysics around the breakfast table. I loved that because, he was, as a storyteller, he was great. As a sweat lodge leader, he was okay, but you could get frozen sometimes because he would insist on doing things in exactly the right way. And as a teacher, he was crap because he would get so cerebral, he would lose you. But discussing metaphysics around the breakfast table was great. He knew everything. He was a scholar. He would sit up in my attic reading the Doomsday Book. He had the most obscure knowledge about everything. He knew everything Native American. They call themselves Indians, by the way. Um, Interestingly, I had another friend who's also Indian. She said this term Native American, I can see why they mean well by it, but there is also a subtle power agenda in it. Yeah. Because if you call us Native Americans, well, you also have Irish Americans, you have
Yep.
Black Americans, you have Italian Americans, you have Native Americans. They're just one more subset. Why should they have any special privileges? Yeah. It's a subtle disempowerment going on. That was her view. Maybe she's a bit paranoid. I don't know. But anyway, it's an interesting point on it. So, but we're of course terribly respectful and would never dream of calling them Indians. But of course, that's what they call themselves still. So indigenousness, yes, let's just stick on that because that's the main the main point. It is about feeling that you belong to the natural world. You don't need any books, you don't need any teachings. Everything comes out of that connection.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, and you see, when I learned shamanism, the first thing I learned was core shamanism. The journeying to the middle world and upper world and lower world, and you meet various guides that are helpers. And I mean, it shifted me profoundly.
Mhm.
Um, I did it 30 years ago. Yeah. It was really helpful to me because I'd been in this Buddhist thing. And if you like, my imagination had got frozen. Yeah. I had these various Buddha figures that I meditated on, but they were like fixed. Yeah. And they were holy. And then you encounter a power animal and they're dancing and they're having fun and they're rude. Yeah. And they're humorous. And they're dead down to earth and they're commonsensical and they move. And so it's like it freed me up on that very deep level doing the journeying. Yeah. And I could feel what it gave me, the journeying was a new foundation in myself. Um, because my foundation had been the faith, if you like, in something outside of myself, these Buddhist teachings, which, it's not like there's anything wrong with them, but they weren't sufficiently mine. They were
Mm.
partly mine, but not sufficiently so. And somewhere I needed the courage, I needed the fortitude, the resilience, the confidence in myself to break free of the teacher, yeah, and go, no, actually, there's points at which he's wrong, and it's time to move on, even though others would have said I was wrong to think that. And it's the journeying that helped me create that new foundation, because suddenly I had this other help. Yeah, it's a tremendous source of strength having these
Mm.
spirit helpers and spirit guides. And it remind me to come back to that as well. But otherwise, I'll head off on that and then forget what I was talking about. Because what I was talking about was that's where shamanism began for me. And I wasn't really told about the importance of the natural world. It took place in a room in a city. And yeah, there was a week in the countryside at a certain point. So that was great. But um, it was the ability to talk to power animals. That's what made you
Mhm.
a shaman. And it's like, well, I've never bloody talked to them in my life. I don't know what's there half the time. Yeah, I bloody well know something's there. Yeah, and is it within me? Is it out there? Well, it depends how you frame it. So that's I'll talk a bit more about that later. But I wasn't given that teaching that shamanism, all indigenous ways begin with that sense of belonging to the
Mm.
mother, to nature. And that is sacred. That is your deep nourishment. That is life itself. Um, and in a way, that's not an indigenous teaching because they don't need it. It's like the air they breathe. You don't need the teaching about air. You just do it. Well, for them, of course, nature's alive. And of course, we're part of it. And of course, it's sacred. Yeah, we forget sometimes because we're human. And that's why we need ceremonies to remind us. So, but for us, I think that needs to be our foundational teaching. And our foundational practice is get out in nature and just be part of it and enjoy it. Don't feel you've got to talk to a tree and then get all hung up because it's not speaking back. No, 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 no. Just enjoy it in a simple way. Yeah. Be out there. Take any pressure off you. Don't even turn it into a religious practice. Yeah. Now you're going to go and connect with nature. No, no, no. Just go out there and enjoy it. Enjoy that tree. Yeah.
Yep. No,
Enjoy the sky.
I
Yeah.
agree with that because a lot of us, we live in cities, we live in these concrete jungles. We might have a small park somewhere, or then we drive in our cars to work. We're stuck in some cubicle all day. People don't see the outside world. They go to work when it's dark. They come home when it's dark. On the weekends, then they're doing chores around the house. They're not actually going out and experience anything. And again, this is more of the Western world, which is what you were saying is we've lost that connection either by choice or by force because of the way our reality is these days. But most of us won't even go for a hike except for like maybe a couple times a year. We just
Yeah.
don't go outside anymore. And and I started the same way. I started with core shamanism too, with journey work. That's what truly opened everything up. And I
Yes.
was like, oh, there is more to this. Am I making this up? Is this real? And then you start getting shown things within the journey that you can bring with you outside the journey. And you're like, oh, this is real. This is, I am connected to something. There is something bigger out there. And then the more you do it, you're like, all right, now I'm understanding more and practicing. And you don't need, and I tell people this all the time, is you don't need to pay anybody to do this for you. You can do it yourself. We all have the ability.
Yes. Yes. But even with nature, well, you may not have the opportunity, but you can have a pot plant on your windowsill
Yeah, true.
and you can appreciate it. Yeah. So it's always possible and it doesn't have to be huge and majestic, but it's great. That's why people have pets. Yeah. Pets take us out
Mhm.
of that cerebral place and in, in, into nature in a way. And yeah, what the Chippewa Cree say, they refer to humans as the newborn ones because we're the only animal who doesn't know who it is.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, a deer knows how to be a deer, a crow knows how to be a crow. Yeah. And if you watch them, everything they do is deliberate. Yeah. Whereas we scratch our heads and have crises, we don't know who we are. And that's because we're newly arrived. And so that's the great help of animal helpers. It's just, if you don't know who you are, you don't know what to do, yeah, just bring the presence of your animal with you, yeah? Scratch its fur, yeah? And then you'll start to know what to do, because they know what to do. They know who they are, so they help us know who we are.
Mm.
And we get disconnected from that. And people always have, you see. It's not just modern people who get disconnected. You see, people have always had busy lives. They've got food to gather. They've got children to take care of. They ain't got time for the sacred. Yeah, they forget about it. Things become merely useful to them. You know, they forget maybe that when they kill a deer, it's a sacred act. That deer has given its life, because
Yeah.
actually they're more concerned about feeding their children. And so that's where the ceremonial leaders come in, and the ceremony comes in, is to remind us. So in a way, it's always been like that. Yeah, it's maybe got a bit extreme lately, where you know, where people will seriously argue that there's no such thing as the spirit. You know, um, yeah,
Well, and some of that comes from, the organized religions. We were told, down there is hell and all things bad, but in shamanic practices, we go to the lower world to get healing. The
yes,
snake isn't evil. The snake can give us teaching. Like, all these things are applying, but when at least with me, when I've talked to some people who are deeply religious, and I talk about the lower world, they instantly go to hell or think it's hell, and they shut down. They don't want to hear it.
yes. Well, they're not being spiritual, I'd say. They're being good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're good, you have a bad. And the modern term for that is spiritual bypass,
Mm.
which you've probably come across. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's where people create a spiritual identity for themselves in order to avoid that which is uncomfortable in themselves, that which they don't want to look at. And that which they don't want to look at, they normally project outside. Well, usually these days onto politicians. They become the bad guys, even though they don't know them from Adam. Yeah. And I mean, Jung talks about this. It's the shadow, and just how difficult it is for people to acknowledge the shadow. It's like it can feel like a demolition. Yeah, people tend to work maybe more on pride than identity, than
Mhm.
on humility. With pride, you're building up a sense of self. Yeah, and you can't admit to anything in case it impacts on that hard-won sense of self. And from the point of view of pride, humility looks like a weakness. And so if you have got humility, you can allow in all that stuff which might get cast into hell, yeah? We all have those. Yeah, we have our pride, we have our anger, we have our self-doubt, we have our anger, anxiety. We have all that pretty lot, yeah? And I think the real task, the real hard work is coming into relationship with all of that, not denying it and casting it into hell, not just acting blindly out of it, but coming into relationship with it.
Mhm.
One traditional perspective, Native American perspective, is that anything that kind of torments you is a spirit that's come to visit you. It belongs to the universe, but it doesn't belong essentially to you. Um, there's a guy called Eduardo Duran. He's Native American guy. I think he lives in New Mexico. He's also a Jungian analyst. He's got a great book called Healing the Soul Wound, and he talks. Most of his clients don't like that word very much, but they're all Native Americans on the reservation, and the starting point is usually alcoholism when they come to see him.
Mm.
So he says, "Okay, the spirit of alcohol wants to be in relationship with you. So introduce yourself." First of all, he'll wave a bit of smudge around and do a bit of ceremony. And that like awakens like an ancestral memory. Yeah. And it's the same for us. Yeah. We if we begin anything with a bit of smudge and a little bit of chanting or whatever, welcome in the spirits, it changes the whole context. It's a new power comes into the room in which we can be open and in which transformation can take place. And it's very simple. Just one wave of a feather can do it,
Mhm.
or one bit of smudge that reminds you of it. And anyway, so he'll do that. And then he says, Okay, introduce yourself to this spirit of alcoholism. Yeah. Tell it who your parents are. Tell it who your grandparents are, because that's the traditional way, because you don't trust someone unless you know and they can prove their ancestry. Then you can trust them, because you only need to be wrong about a stranger once and you're dead. So, and then you get the spirit of alcohol to introduce itself. And he says, maybe that will all that will happen in the first session. He goes, but immediately their relationship with the bottle changes. It's quite remarkable, because it's the beginning of a different relationship where we simply come into relationship with these things. We don't let them have power over us, but we get to know them and we let them live there. And I think they do get easier as we get older. I mean, as a man, yeah, most of us have a kind of red mist when we're younger. Yeah, this red mist of anger, which at certain times can get out of control. It's the warrior in us. It's the shadow of the warrior in us. And as we get older, it kind of mellows. Yeah. But, so we need to find a way of being in relationship with that red mist if we're a young man. Yeah. And not just denying it, but not acting on it either. Apologizing immediately and profusely if we do act on it, but not denying that it's there and not being unfriendly to it. We need sympathy. We need compassion. We need to love it. Yeah.
Yep.
But we need to keep it on a leash. Yeah. And
Because there is a
gradually,
reason for it. There is a reason. There is
yeah.
a need sometimes for that anger, for that mess, but it's not all the time, right? And it's finding that balance.
Well, there's anger and there's anger.
Yeah.
There's anger, which is always helpful, which is the desire for the good to prevail. It's not personal. You're not trying to destroy anyone personally, but you're pushing through something that is in the way, maybe something that needs to be said forcefully and truthfully. And people will take it because you feel you're not trying to destroy them. Whereas where there's hatred, if you like, anger in the negative sense, people feel you're attacking them personally. And that is not a good thing. And it's being the positive warrior and not that shadow warrior that we learn as men. Yeah. So there is all that work being at our cold face. Yeah. The cold face of all our tribulations, our dementors. If you've ever read Harry Potter, yeah, you have there's a being in there called a dementor.
Yeah.
Well, it's about being with our dementors for 20 years, yeah. And that's what gives you character, is being with them. Yeah. Not trying to change them, because we don't know why they're there. Yeah. We don't know how they need to transform. There's a good example of this from Lord of the Rings, where Gollum was taken prisoner and tortured by Mordor, and then he's released. And Frodo says to Gandalf, it's a pity they didn't kill him. And Gandalf goes, no, I sense that Gollum still has a part to play. Yeah. And Gandalf was right. He could sort of divine the sort of bigger web of things. Yeah. And of course, right at the end of the film, where Frodo is supposed to throw the ring into Mount Doom, he's become so possessed by the ring that he can't do it. Yeah. And then out comes Gollum from the shadows, seizes, bites the finger off Frodo that has the ring on it. Yeah. And then falls into Mount Doom. Yeah. Yeah. So somehow it was that fierce, negative, avaricious energy that actually saved the day. So that I guess that's the kind of point we're making, is let's not stand in too much judgment over these things. Yeah. Let's welcome them and be friends with them, but let's not act on them. It's very difficult not to act on them, but that's integrity. Yeah. That's why I'm not entirely, I don't necessarily entirely believe with these workshops where you get your anger out on a cushion. And I go, well, okay, maybe for some, but it always feels a bit faked up to me. And it's not how you deal with anger. You contain it, you have dignity, you own it, but you don't act on it, and you let that alchemy. There's a kind of cooking that's always going on in us at a deeper level, spirit directed. Yeah. Of all this stuff, our job is to simply stay at the coalface and hold it together. And this deep foundation of integrity, it makes us a moral person. Morality is deeply unfavorable, but unfashionable. Yeah. But I think morality is a profound thing. It's very necessary because it's, what is it in myself am I going to act on? Yeah. And what we really need to act on is that which is really true in us, that which is our calling, that which the spirits want us to live from. Yeah. And not acting from the hatred in us,
Mm,
not doing things out of self-doubt. All of those things. Yeah. That's what morality is about. And it's the great transformer, because action is a great transformer, because it's an incarnating of all those different spirits within us. Because that's what we're here to do, is to incarnate. It's like, well, that's how I see Christ on the cross. It's spirit incarnating. Now, I think it's fucked up in quite a lot of ways as well. And I don't think that picture of torture should be the center of one's mythology. It
mm,
should be kept in a box and brought out for secret, deep rituals. Yeah. And it's a bit like the sun dance. It's the same principle as the sun dance, where you have your chest pierced with these um two sticks, and you have no food or drink, and you dance until they're torn through your flesh. Yeah. And in that depth of suffering, you find this deep relationship with spirit. Yeah. Same with the heat and the sweat lodge. It melts you into your heart. You have to yield. It's too painful not to yield. And it's a bit the same with the crucifix. I think they understood something. It's about the difficulty, the sheer difficulty of incarnating in spirit. Yeah. You don't want to know about your anxiety and your anger and your self-doubt. You'd rather push them to one side, but it's like, no, live them, incarnate them, keep them close. Yeah. But don't act on them. Yeah. That's what requires the strength.
mm,
Yeah. And out of that foundation, this is the real qualification for being any kind of healer or teacher. Yeah. It's not the courses you've been to. It's not the certificates you've been to. You've got. You can learn that in a weekend. Technically, it's simple. How to run a pipe ceremony, you can learn in 5 minutes. It's technically very, very simple. But to have that kind of presence, yeah, that can hold that space, that's probably at least 20 years work, just being with yourself.
mm,
Um, and that communicates almost imperceptibly to the people around you. It's like, yeah, this person has that kind of substance, and something rubs off on them, that kind of integrity and the humility that comes with it. Because that's what the spirits need us to do, so that we could be an adequate vehicle for them. So if you like, we can be the hollow bone.
mm,
Yeah. We can stand out the way. We've got humility. This is something our dementors teach us. They teach us humility. Yeah. Because we realize we're no better than anyone else. We have those things in us, and we will always have them, hopefully. There's only one thing worse than having dementors, and that's not having them. We bloody well need them as humans, because we get above ourselves. That's why a lot of the Native American stories are about the trickster. Because the trickster is, if you like, well, or Wisa, as he's known in the Chippewa Cree stories. He's this guy who's always getting above himself. He thinks he's really good at something. He gets all this self-importance, and then he comes unstuck out of it. Yeah. And so many of their stories are based around that principle. It's almost like they're central to humans is their pride, their tendency to get above themselves. And our medicine for it is to tell stories that laugh at it. Yeah. They use humor. Yeah. And so they understood this deeply. And in a way, I'm saying the same thing about being prepared to stay with your stuff and not be ashamed of it. Yeah. But obviously, you don't tell it to people who have pride, because they will just look down on you. They will see it as weakness. But it's wonderful when there's people that you can share it with. So that's the real qualification for being any kind of healer or teacher. And I don't think that's understood. Yeah.
no,
Because
I
you
would
can't
agree
give
with
people you can't give people a certificate. Yeah. For a 20-year course. You can only give them a certificate and take their money for a short course. Now, I'm not being over cynical, because there is good stuff comes out of these courses. But really, I mean, the guy who used to come and stay with me, he said he was probably in his late 60s. He says, back home on the reservation, I'm not an elder. Yeah. That's the guys in their 70s and 80s. That's the guys who've got some real wisdom. So I remember that. I'm in my 60s now, and I will allow myself that in some ways, I'm beginning to know what I'm talking about. That's why I started writing books 5 years ago. Yeah. And I realized, I know, I'm starting to know what I'm talking about. I didn't 15 years ago. I could have written it, but it wouldn't have had that flavor,
Mm.
that touch mark of this guy knows what he's talking about. It's a flavor. So I'm beginning to. And that takes a lot of pressure off us, Yeah. If we don't have to have the real wisdom till our 70s or 80s, because we live in a culture that's, there's a lot of pressure to achieve. There's a lot of pressure to show what you're worth, yeah, in obvious ways. And when we're on this kind of path, we have nothing obvious to show for it. And so that's humiliating, or can be, but that's also what gives us humility. It's a great teaching. I spent so many years feeling like at some level I've failed, I'm a loser. Yeah. I haven't even written books. I can't even succeed in this shamanic world. All these younger people are writing books. But I think it was good for me, yeah. Now, now I'm more humble than anyone I know. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Well, no, but I mean, it is true, right? Because there's a lot of teachers out there, and I've looked at some, and I'm not gonna name names or anything like that, but there's some who get so ingrained with what they do that they think they're at such a higher level than the people that they're teaching, and that it's like you mentioned earlier, becomes this rigid structure where everything has to be this specific way. This is the only way that works. This is the perfect way to do it. I know best. Don't you dare question me whatsoever. And it becomes a religion, right? It becomes its own religion in itself, even though it's not supposed to be.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think it's a two-way dynamic. You know, the teacher needs to feel he's up there and he's adored, and the pupils feel that they need to have someone who's up there who can provide them with the answers. So it's a sort of folie à deux, if you like.
Mm.
Um, but I think it was always thus. It's always been like this. I don't rail against it anymore. I mean, some people they like to go, well, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, they're all religions, but shamanism isn't. Yeah. I used to hear exactly the same thing said when I was a Buddhist. Oh, Buddhism isn't a religion, but all the others are. And it's like, my view is that religion is what happens as soon as you get two people in the same room. Yeah. Because what they do, usually, yeah, is there's this unspoken rules of how to behave, what to think. Yeah. The who's up there and who's down there. I mean, a group will do that naturally. Even if the teacher doesn't want it, the pupils will put him or her on a pedestal. And the skilled teacher can hand that projection back gracefully. Now, so most shamanism will be religion, at least the public face of it, because the public face of it is inevitably groups. It's inevitable. Um, you'll get teachers, and I mean, we learn so much from the shadow of the teachers as we learn from their gifts. Yeah. We certainly learn from their gifts, and usually they've got some gifts. But as you say, they get caught. They get caught in this thing. And they end up saying the same thing 20 years later as they're saying 20 years before. And it's like this thing that just goes round and round. And that isn't necessarily that you can tell there's a vitality to it, there's a life to it, yeah, when it's alive and when they're not being fed off the adoration of the pupils. And, it's a bit of one and a bit of the other. It's not black or white. Now, I maintain that we need religion. It's the starting point for people. We're not ready to trust that guidance from spirit. Yeah. Because really, as a healer, as a medicine person, all your guidance comes from spirit. But that's in an ideal world. Yeah. Usually we're not ready for that. Usually we're at some halfway house. That's why you get the shamanic illness in the Far East. He's not ready to let go of all the teachings around him that give him security and just leap over the cliff and let spirit carry him away on the wind. Yeah. And most people don't change much in the course of a lifetime. They might shift a little bit. So the Buddhist lot I used to be part of, I see these guys, they're in their 70s. Yeah. They've been in it for like 50 years and they're just starting to question the teacher a bit. They're just starting to go, I think the teacher's got that bit wrong and maybe got that bit wrong, you know, when they're feeling brave.
Mhm.
you know, but maybe they won't tell anyone yet. And that may be as much as they shift in this lifetime. Yeah. But that does represent a shift, and it's taken a long time. Yeah. So I am sympathetic, because where do we start except with, usually, where do we start? Unless we're exceptional, where do we start except from guidance outside of ourselves? We start with the teacher, we start with books, and they really help us. But they are like a launch pad for the rocket, which is our own connection with the spirits. The spirits
Mhm.
pulling us upwards, our own unique connection. But we need that launch pad. And that launch pad might be just a few months, or it might be 50 years. Um, and so that's how I see it. And there can be, and also, but you see, within religions, well, let's call them traditions, you get this tremendous depth builds up. And what gets called egregore, which is the power inherent in a tradition through having been done in the same way for centuries or thousands of years. I noticed that with the tarot pack. If I pick up a tarot pack, it can feel loaded.
Mhm.
And those symbols on it really speak. And it's like they're carrying all that power from the hundreds of years that all these people are doing it. So there can be something in doing a ceremony in exactly the right way. Yeah. And knowing you get some teachers, they can explain the exact symbolism behind every part of the sweat lodge, exactly how you build it, exactly how you tie the knots. Everything in it has a spirit meaning. The whole building of the sweat lodge is a sacred ceremony in itself. It is prolonged. Yeah. Everything in it is related to the sacred. And there's such a beauty in it and such a depth in it. But you can also see what a trap it is. Yeah. If the person, and I think that comes down to the person who's leading it. Yeah. Is there, they need to know. It's like, the way I put it is that you need to earn the right to break the rules of a tradition. You need to really learn the tradition first,
Oh, yeah.
embody it, live it, let it become you. And then you can add your own meanings. And so a good sweat lodge leader who knows exactly the sort of meaning, he will expand all those meanings, but there'll just be a flavor about him. Yeah. That is non-dogmatic. It's nothing you can prove, but you can feel, yeah, and maybe he'll be a bit loose about it sometimes, just out of necessity. Yeah. And the
Mhm.
flavor around that, he won't make a big deal. There'll be a looseness around it as well, because really he understands that it's, at the end of the day, it's only a pointer to spirit. It's the chaos. All traditions are a pointer to the chaos, or to the great mystery, or to the great spirit. The great spirit, by the way, is a translation of Wakantanka, which Fool's Crow says literally means the holiest of holies. Yeah. There's a book about him by Thomas E. Males, which is well worth reading.
Okay.
Thomas Foolcrow. Now no, not Thomas E. Males. Frank Foolcrow is his name. He was one of the greatest medicine men of the 20th century, Lakota guy. Anyway, he ended up going to the Catholic Church regularly. I think it was Catholic. And how that happened is interesting, because, of course, he was the great local medicine man who could do some serious healings. People who maybe even had disfigurements. You see, he would pray twice a day. And over time, he just built this huge channel to spirit through his prayers twice a day with his pipe. And people would come to him and he would just be told what to do and they would heal. Of course, the local church hasn't got anyone like that. They needed him on board. You can imagine it. And so they said, come along, you're the same as us. It's the same thing. And he goes, no. If you can tell me that my God is the same as your God, then I come along. And they wouldn't. So he said, I didn't go. I waited for them to change their minds. Eventually they changed their minds. They went, okay, your God is the same as your God, as our God. And so then I started to go along. I thought that was great. That was great. So, so, yeah, I was talking about, tradition, the need for it, how deep it is, how beautiful it is. Yeah. And because I've called this book Chaos Shamanism, and people who are maybe rebellious against tradition, yeah, which is understandable. We do need to rebel against it, but they might be surprised to find how actually traditionally minded I am. Yeah. I love traditions. I love particular ways of doing things, but then I also love to be loose and flexible around that. But I really appreciate the need for tradition, because it also, if you use the word religion instead, religious etymologically means that which binds together. It creates community. It pulls people together. Now, in its negative form, it pulls people together as an ideology. Yeah. We've got it right and no one else has. And if you leave, you're going to be damned to hell. Yeah. But the positive way that it binds people together, there's a Russian word, sobornost, that you get in the Russian Orthodox Church, which is the experience in a congregation at its best, where there's a deep sense of collective consciousness in which your own consciousness, individual consciousness, is heightened. Yeah. And that's what it does at its best. And you've probably been in ceremonies like that. Like in a sweat lodge, you'll get that, where you've got these people in the dark praying from their heart. Yeah.
Mhm.
You may not know anyone in there. Yeah. You may not know who's praying, but you're praying from the perspective of the spirit. Yeah. Of what matters, the metaphysical quest. You're together with these people that you do not know personally on a profound level. And I'm sure you've had that experience, this deep
Right.
metaphysical connection with people you don't. So that's what tradition, that's what religion at its best does. Yeah. And it's always a bit of both. Yeah. So they may well have a weird dysfunctional relationship with the sweat lodge leader, but you also get this subordinate stuff going on as well. It's always a bit of a mixed thing that's going on. And I think we need to be forgiving of religion and see the need for it and support it. While at the same time being prepared to call out where a teacher really is behaving in a way that's out of order, because you do get that, and you get Native Americans doing that because they can really pull a fast one. You hear about them. They'll come over here and they'll sleep with half the women because they can. Yeah, they can behave really badly, and the women on the reservation do not like these men behaving in that way. Understandably, they're really distressed by it. So they can. This is another point about indigenousness: is that we put indigenous people on a pedestal.
Mm.
Yeah. We think that they're the ones with the goods. Yeah. That it's a one-way thing. And this brings me back to my earlier point where I was saying, on the one hand, you can say we're remote from indigeneity, or you can say, no, we're close to it, but this is how to find it. So hang on, I've just been messaged again. I'll just put it out of my mind. Uh, I'll find out what they were and their significance later. So by the same token, we need to feel that we have the goods as well. Yeah. And so when I wrote my first book, which was on the medicine wheel, and that was during COVID, I declared at the beginning, I have no traditional training. Yeah. I don't mind if you call me a cultural appropriator. I'm going to give my own account of what I've made of this medicine wheel over the last 25 years of having it in my life, one way or the other. And I did, and it works really well. I've got a friend who's native who likes it. Yeah, so it does speak. And so, but in a way, this is what I mean by claiming that indigenousness for ourselves and not always looking to them for the authorities. Receiving what we can, they do have stuff, but not being fools and being willing to see their shadow too. Because you can see sometimes they're just being really dogmatic. Another thing you can see, because what some of them do is like, yeah, they do have great teachings, but they're very, they can be putting down of what it is we're trying to do. The shamanism we're trying to do, they can be quite dismissive, yeah? They can not let us near any of their teachings. They can lead us on a sweat lodge, yeah? And they can do it really well, but you don't get the sense we could do it ourselves, yeah? And you don't sense that they've got much respect. They don't even talk about what it is we do. And I think that is an understandable defensiveness in indigenous people, because if you think about it, their culture has been overrun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to
Now
lose anything to us coming in.
Yeah, their culture has been overrun by us. Now, I don't think that's what always has happened in history. I'm not saying I approve of it, but we shouldn't feel guilty about that, because they will play on our guilt. Yeah, we play on our guilt. they can be happy to buy into that as well. Do not feel guilty. It's nothing you've done personally. There's a Native American guy called Jim Dumont. I was listening to him telling a creation myth. Look him up on YouTube. He tells a great creation myth, and he's a Cinnabon, I think. And one thing he comes out with is that he says, these words were occurring to me as these other speakers were talking. He goes, and what occurred to me was, everyone has a right to feel good about themselves.
Mm.
Yeah. Now you can see that applying to current day Native Americans who are living maybe on welfare. Yeah. Looked down upon. Yeah. You can see why that would apply to them. Oh, my phone's ringing now. I'll just turn it off. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Got it. I'm being bombarded. It's the spirit world. It wants to tell me something. What is it you want to tell me? And so everyone has a right to feel good about themselves, but that includes us because we've been told to feel guilty. We've been told to feel ashamed of our culture because of what this or that ancestor might have done. And I say, no, don't. Stand upright, feel good about yourself. Do not feel guilty on behalf of your ancestors. That's the wrong form of ancestor worship. Yes. Yeah. Um, uh, uh, we didn't do that. Everyone has a right. We begin our lives free of ancestral guilt because all that does is keep ancestral hatreds alive. We have to remember that. So yeah, coming back to tradition, yes, Native Americans, they can be very defensive because they've been overrun by another culture. And so they're trying to protect it. And one of the ways is to put ours down. And so I expect better from a good teacher. I expect a good teacher to maybe feel that defensiveness, but not to act on it, not to teach on it, encourage what it is, see the good in what it is that we're doing and encourage it. That is what a good teacher always does. And so they're not all going to do that because they're human. Yeah. So we need not to be fools around that and other things and how they behave around the women, how dogmatic they are. They do all these things. And yet they can have this wonderful flavor of something that we learn from. And so their shadow is what we learn from in the same way that we learn from the teachers. That's how we take people off pedestals. We feel betrayed. We feel this terrible thing has happened. We've spent 20 years with this teacher and it's all been a waste of time because he was betraying me like this, that, and the other. And it's like, no. Spirit led you by the nose into this teacher and you've learnt all this from this teacher. And now you're getting your greatest gift of all, which is his shadow, because you really will bloody learn from that. You feel you've been really bloody bitten, really bloody betrayed, yeah? But we can only be betrayed if we've given something away. And we can only give something away if we didn't truly have it in the first place. You can't give your power away if you truly have your power. And through the pain and the sense of betrayal that comes from giving it away, when we reclaim it more firmly than we had it before. And we have a sense of something new being born in us. Initiation.
Mm.
That's what it is. Initiation. We sometimes, we're sorry that we don't have initiation in our culture anymore. And yes, that is a loss, but the biggest initiations don't come from ceremony. They come from life itself. Life will initiate us if we're open to it. It really will initiate us because life, by its nature, is always wanting to move on to the next stage. The way life works is that we live in a particular phase and we develop that and we live it and then it tips over into another phase. But particularly when we're younger, we resist that. Yeah. We're terrified of it. And so we have these crises. Yeah. We get ill. And out of that, and nothing works anymore, as you've experienced. The shamanic illness doesn't have to be literal in terms of physical illness or even psychological illness. It can be, my life is no longer working, everything, and it's almost like the life has gone out of your life, yeah? And you don't know what, you think there must be something wrong with you. You try desperately to make it back as it was, but actually, eventually you yield, and there's this gift, there's power, there's something for you to claim. And in a way, you've always known it's there and you've tried to put it to one side because it doesn't fit conveniently with the rest of your normal life. But eventually it comes in. And whenever you get a new element coming in, the whole of your being has to rearrange itself. It's not an add-on. There's a new center to who you are, a new spirit center to who you are. So it's a deep thing. It's a deep, transformative, alchemical, tantric path. This shamanic path, yeah, it
Mhm.
really is. You really are. It's like this high voltage cable that's come down from the ancient ancestors, yeah, and it's there in spirit. And how close can you stand next to that electric cable? Because it really will transform you. It really will turn your life around. And yeah, and we have different measures of it depending on what we can stand and who we are. But it's like T.S. Eliot, the poet, says, humankind cannot bear very much reality. And that's why I'm sympathetic to religion, because humankind can't bear very much reality. It can bear some. Yeah. So we give them some and we allow people to be dogmatic and all the rest of it because they can't help it. But at least they're believing in a relatively sane kind of certainty instead of an insane certainty. It's a bit like that. So faith,
What I was gonna
faith.
say, and that's the interesting part too, is like with most traditional religions, there is spirit work. There is, they'll call it like saints, but you can look at that as like deity work and stuff like that as well. But when it's anything outside of their area, then it becomes a problem, which always confused me. I went to a Catholic wake for a friend that passed away, and the priest was doing the incense and calling in the four directions, before the ceremony started, in their own language, right? But it was literally calling in the four directions and calling in the spirits of each direction underneath that Catholic framework. And I was looking at it going, this is no different than what I do. But yet a lot of you have a problem with what I do if I were to tell you.
Huh. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. 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 Well, I guess um, it's an ancient prejudice within Christianity that pagans are lower and evil and satanic and all of that. But credit to that priest for bringing it in by the back door. Yeah. And of course, Catholicism, well, it has saints. What's the
Yeah.
difference between the saint and the spirit, and the powers and the directions? You know, they understood that need for it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all there, it's just they don't talk about it the same way, and then it becomes a taboo thing, right? You know, even doing tarot cards could be devil worshiping
Yeah.
instead of communicating with with your higher self or with the spirit world.
Yes. Well, I mean, in medieval times, astrology was castigated
Mm.
for summoning up demons. That's how they saw it. Well, of course, the spirits do speak through if you're a good astrologer. And um, what they're subtly doing when they do that is that they're acknowledging that astrology has power. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. It was essentially a power struggle. Yeah. That's why they demonized astrology, tarot, all the rest of it. Essentially, it's a power struggle for supremacy. Yeah. It's a political thing, I think, essentially, originally. And then
No,
it's
that makes
become like a folk memory that these things are evil.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the same with how they, took over other cultures' holidays and made it their own. That way they could get more people into the church itself. I mean, if you go through the whole history, even St. Patrick's Day wasn't about killing the snakes, it was about getting rid of the pagans.
Was it?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you see, Christianity did, its spread it came about because it had become a political religion in Rome. It had become the official religion of Rome under Constantine in about 400 or whatever. And it was a means of power. If you can get people mythologically as well as legally, you've really got them.
No, that is
And
true.
so, yeah.
I was gonna ask, but what was I think we've touched on it a little bit, but what was the overall inspiration of the book, Chaos Shamanism? What made you decide that now was the time for it?
Well, I didn't have a book in mind. I've written 7 books in the last 5 years. Each time I didn't have a book in mind. And suddenly it came upon me. Well, no, that's not true for 3 of them because they were a trilogy, but the rest of them, it just appeared. Well, what happened? I was in these fairy woods. Yeah. Well, I call them fairy woods. A friend of mine, she's got these woods near Doncaster, and there is a presence about them. And it was the first time I'd visited, and I didn't realize, but things happen to people in those woods. So I was sitting there chatting with her, and this other person who was there who'd learned a very traditional way, yeah, of running sweat lodges, etc., etc. And she knew it, and it had a beauty to it, but it also had a kind of rigidity to it, yeah, which I wasn't going to say, but I could feel that, yeah. It's like she's very in hot. This is what my teacher says, yeah, and I'm not like that anymore. And so so then I started talking. I said, well, I haven't taught formally for about 15 years. I'd had an instinct just not to. It wasn't the time. I said, but if I was to teach, this is how I would do it. I just had this instinct, this thing in me that wanted to uprise. Yeah. And it was essentially chaos shamanism. I can't remember if I called it that, but it was about really making all the teachings, the medicine wheels, the pipe ceremonies, the journeying, the vision quest, the trance dance, all of these things, really making them my own, claiming them for my own. But the authority, if I was to teach them, comes not from the tradition now, good as that might be, but from myself. And I've made something of that myself through being around them and then writing a book out of that. And I realized in the speaking of it, just what a well of inspiration. I was weeping as I said it. Yeah. I had such a well of inspiration for this speaking out of this thing, which I could only think of as the chaos within me. Yeah. And so I went home and I thought I'll make a YouTube video out of it. Yeah. I've just got one 10-minute YouTube video. I've had this idea for what I call chaos shamanism. So I spoke about it, because I said what comes first isn't the teaching out there. It's that deep connection to the mystery within you, which I'm calling the chaos, because the chaos is the womb of existence. It's the fruitful womb in Greek times. In a way, the Greek is an older creation myth for us, in a way more foundational than Christianity. Yeah, that is the fecund womb out of which it comes, and out of which shamanism comes, is when we made our own connection. So I did this 10-minute video, and then I realized I've got another one, and I carried on like that for about 5 of them, and then I realized they're keeping coming. I said, I don't know how long this is going to go on for. In the end, I literally made about 50 videos. And as I did so, I realized I've got a whole book here. Yeah. Because I'd written a book on the medicine wheel, but that's just one particular teaching, which can encompass everything. Yeah. But I wanted to write about my whole understanding of indigenousness and the ceremonies and practices around it. And so it's an opportunity to do that coming from the authority being something deep within myself, which goes beyond myself, really making it my own. There's this teaching in Buddhism, the 3 levels of wisdom, which are listening, thinking, and becoming. And in listening, you hear the teaching, you understand the sense of it, you understand the directions of the medicine wheel. Then you think about it, you reflect on it and how it works, you understand it, and you sit with that understanding. And then at a certain point, maybe years later, it's like it becomes you. It's there deep within your body. And that's the becoming. And that's when you've got insight. Yeah. That's when you've got wisdom. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to speak about things from that deep knowing that I've earned through sitting with these things over many years. And that is also the chaos. So that was the inspiration. And as I say, it took me by surprise. But I feel that I've really said something that I really wanted to say. So I've given voice to something from so deep within myself. Yeah, something that's been cooking and gestating for years that I feel is very important, because I feel it's very important that we own indigenousness for ourselves. Yeah. Appreciate and acknowledge the indigenous people, but don't feel that it's them who've got the power. We've got the power. And that's what a good teacher does. It's like, we've got the power. Yeah. But I'm
Well,
not
and
going to do the opposite. Sorry. Yeah.
I was gonna say, and we're all humans. We're all from the same place. I had the same thing come up during my own training. There was a lady who literally asked the Quiro shamans. that were training us. And she's like, well, how can I use the word shaman because I'm a white lady? I'm from America, this and that. And the Quero just looked at her and he's like, yeah, but you're still indigenous of the earth. You're still a human. Like, these are our
Yes.
traditions which we are allowing you to use and we are teaching you, so you can call yourself whatever you want. It's
Yes.
like, that part doesn't matter. Now, if you break into a reservation or you break into a ceremony and you weren't invited and you're stealing the information that they're asked, that you're not supposed to take, then yeah, that's an issue. But if you're being welcomed in and learning the traditions and they're showing you how to do it, then you're not, to me, that's not wrong. That's good. And you don't want to, like you said, we're not putting them on a pedestal. They're the same people. Like, there's no difference if they were born on a reservation or not. They're still humans. Some of them will still do bad things. Some of them will do good things. We're all the same.
Yes. Yeah. And even with this thing of, well, I mean, I wasn't trained traditionally in the medicine wheel. I just ran with it myself.
Mm,
And now here's the thing. Some Native Americans would call that cultural appropriation. Others wouldn't. Others would say, no, well done. Run with it. So who you're going to listen to? It's not like there's a singular
yeah.
authority that will tell you. Yeah. And humans have always stolen. Of course, you need to do it with sensitivity.
Yep.
Yeah. But we bloody well need to steal from everywhere we can. And we're in this unique position. This is also the chaos, yeah, is that we can draw on traditions from all around the world, from the whole of human history. What a wonderful opportunity. There's such a rich mix we've got at the moment.
That's true, especially with the internet. I mean, the world is literally open to learn whatever
Yeah.
we want and to find what resonates with you. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this podcast was bring on other people who do different things. That way, when people are listening, they can go, "Oh, I resonate with this. Let me
Yeah.
learn more. Let me figure this out now." It could be Thai, occult magic. It could be Reiki. It could be shamanism. It's find what works for you, learn it, find something else that resonates, incorporate it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's
Yeah.
finding that blended. We're all in that blended model now.
Yes. But also, well, I mean, part of my theme, the important part of my theme in chaos shamanism is, yeah, take these things and make them your own, but don't you need to earn the right
Yeah.
to start to talk about it and teach it. And that's where the 20 years at your own coalface is needed. So that you've got the quality of being that can make something of these teachings and truly understand what it is they're pointing at. So a point I didn't complete earlier is, there is this thing that isn't taught about this need to spend 20 years at the coalface, as I call it, because we do live in a culture that values achievement and something to show for ourselves. And so people are very quick to get certificates and then start practicing it. It's like you come out the other end being a healer, having done a 1-year course. And okay, I'm not saying it's all bad, but it's not like that. I mean, I don't even know what healing is, let alone how would I teach someone else to be a healer? I haven't got a bloody clue what I'd do. Yeah. It's like, because I wouldn't think of becoming a healer myself. I don't think we should think in terms of becoming this, that, or the other. It will come to us. That's the thing. This is about a spirit-led life, and this is about faith, if you like. We need to let people come towards us. I find it very hard to advertise my services. If I do try and advertise my services, nothing usually happens. I thought, I live in this house on my own. I want people coming through it. I've been here for 3 years. Right, I'll start a medicine circle and we'll do it around the medicine wheel. We'll have it once a week. And this was 3 months ago. No one came. Literally no one came. It's like, okay, I hear you, spirit. So we have to trust what isn't happening as well as what is happening. But we can be so anxious to prove something and make something of ourselves and be professional. Now, being a healer, it's not about being a professional. Of course, professional carries a certain cachet and it does have certain standards, which of course,
Mm.
can be worth bearing in mind. But we're not professional in that narrow sense. If you're an accountant, you can learn to be one in 5 years, and then you will correctly advertise how good you are. Yeah. But if you're a healer, it might take you 20 years, and you would never call yourself that. And you certainly would not be putting up advertisements saying how good you are at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which a lot of people do. And they try and add to it by going, my grandmother was a healer, so that makes me extra powerful. And I used to have these visions when I was 6. All that sort of shit. Yeah. It's like, don't go near it. Yeah. They probably have got some gifts. I'm not denying that either. But really, this is what we don't understand in our culture. It's something different. It's not an add-on. It's to do with who you are at the deepest level. It's an outpouring of that, and it's spirit sending someone your way. So if someone comes my way, I always say yes. I love it, and I'll do whatever I'm asked to do, in the trust that whatever needs to happen will happen, and I love doing it. Can't remember where I was going with that one.
I don't
Over
know.
to
I
you.
mean, I agree though, because I don't even like using the word healer anyway. Because when I work with people or even working on myself, it's like I'm not healing them. We're clearing things that are in their way so that they can work
Yeah,
on themselves. It's removing the blockage or clearing out the imprint or helping them even integrate with their shadow. It's not
yeah,
I'm not doing the work. They're doing it themselves, and it's just me helping them with
yeah,
some guidance to get there. And I really
yeah,
hate, I don't like calling myself a healer. It's just, I the most I'll go as a shamanic practitioner. It's like our shaman, but it's not healings. Healing's the after effect after they do the work.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not me laying hands and curing them of all their
yeah.
problems.
Yeah. Well, there may be stuff that shunts on through what you do, but it's something that comes through you, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I mean, because healing comes from the word whole, doesn't it? It's about making yourself whole. But the word shaman to me is an even greater claim to spiritual status than healer. But anyway, it's interesting. There's a guy called Louis Malmadrona. He's worth looking up.
Okay.
Um, he's written a book called Coyote Medicine. Well, he's written several books. He's a conventional doctor, but he's also a Lakota Cherokee guy, and he does traditional stuff. Anyway, a few years ago he's hanging out with the elders as he does sometimes in the summer, and they're at the powwow, and they were chatting about saying, "What should we call ourselves?" And they go, well, healer, that's a bit pretentious, yeah. Medicine man, that sounds like something out of spaghetti western. So they go, let's call ourselves the fix it men. Yeah. A bit like you get the plumber out, yeah. Or you, you know, you get the electrician out, you get the fix it man out. And I thought, yeah, that's good. That's got humility about it and it's down to earth. But then I thought, even that doesn't go far enough because you're not actually fixing people. I thought, um, what what are what is best to describe itself is as the flat pack helpline. Yeah. You know the IKEA flat packs, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't bloody work them out. We have to ring up. That's what we are. We'll explain the blueprint for you, but you're gonna have to do the assemblage, yeah? So that's what we are. We're the flat pack helpline. So
Yeah, no, it's been one of those things where it's like, "Oh, you do this?" Like, yeah, but again, like you said, it's becoming that hollow bone and spirit just works through you, and at this point, I just listen to whatever comes up. It's like I might think we're starting one way, and then, an ancestor or a spirit guide shows up on their side or my side, or I just get an insight of, "No, do this now." I was like,
yeah,
"Okay, I'll do this now," and it's like,
yeah,
this is just what needs to happen. You don't question it or expect it to go a certain way anymore. It's just we'll start and see what happens.
yeah, and that requires trust and faith, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So here's another thing Louis Melmadrona talks about. He says that in a traditional situation, if someone comes to you for help, well, you get to know the family. Yeah, because that says a lot about it. You spend time getting to know them first. In the Far East, in a tribal situation, they'd have known the person.
Mm.
They'd have known him. Yeah, you have all that background. Whereas the model we get taught, and I believe it's still taught this way, is that someone comes to you for a healing, yeah? You've never met them before. You have a 10-minute chat, and you ask the spirits what they need. And so you do whatever the spirits say. You take their $100 or whatever, yeah? Everyone's happy. You've got your money, they've got their healing. And okay, good stuff still happens there.
Mhm.
But there's no replacement for the depth that comes out of being able to take your time over it and getting to know people. I mean, there's one traditional thing that if you go to a medicine person with a question and some desire for help, they'll go away and think about it for 4 days, yeah? It takes time. It takes time for the spirits to cook
Yeah.
around us and about us, and for something to be born that is really helpful. And because you know what it's even getting to know someone. Maybe a year or two into getting to know someone, you go, oh, something falls into place about them that you hadn't quite seen before. You go, how could I have not seen that yet? It's a bit like that. So there's a kind of human level to things as well that I think we need. And if someone does come to see you, well, you can almost feel under pressure that they're expecting you to do something and you better wave a feather around and drum, or they're going to
Right.
feel you haven't done the goods. So, okay, wave your bloody feather around and stuff. Yeah. So, because actually that does have an effect. It does key them into another reality. But all you might need to do is just talk to them for a bit. Yeah. They just need might need someone to bloody well listen to listen to them. Yeah. Because no one listens to them. They just need to get it out. Yeah. And often what they think they've come with, because I get this with astrology readings, yeah? And sometimes it'd be an hour and a half in, towards the end of the reading, suddenly the most important thing of all comes up. Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's what they're really there for. That's what I really need to talk about. Okay, we'll keep going for another half hour then, yeah? So so it's like that. But that said, I mean, I love doing the healing work. And the way I do it, I don't do it very often. It's rarely people come to me for it. And I can't say I know what I'm doing when I do it, but something happens. And often I don't know what it is that's been done until they tell me later. They go, I'm free of this now, or I've just gone and done that. You know, but the way I work, you see, I started off doing the journeying, the conventional way. You
Mhm.
listen, you pay attention to the drum, you go to the lower world, you meet your power animal, etc., etc. Um, but then after a while, I realized it didn't come completely naturally to me that way. And then what I noticed when I was doing trance dance, which is like allowing the spirits to move through you to ideally live drums, but you can also do it perfectly well to electronic music, and that has its own advantages. It's like I would be taken over powerfully. The first time I did it, and this was back in like 1999, 2000, people were watching because it was like this huge presence was suddenly there. They said it was like a T-Rex or a dinosaur. Yeah. Slowly taking a look round the earth after having been absent for 1,000,000 years. Yeah. It was like that, this ancient kind of presence. And since then, it's become very natural that the spirit animals will embody me or I will embody them. And it's an ecstatic experience. And I found that my work is more powerful for that because they've got me to work through physically. And and yeah, it does tend to just shunt stuff in people,
Mhm.
free them from some cage or other, or I don't know what it was, whatever it is that happens. But it's interesting, it doesn't happen very often. I don't know why the spirits don't send me people, because I know I mean, in the early days, I used to go to festivals and do it. Glastonbury Festival, I had my yurt up there. I used to have a great time. I spent all bloody week doing this stuff. But it's forced me back into thinking about what is the real nature, stand back from the core shamanism I learned, and what is this thing really about? And of course, well, you know, saying there's three worlds, yeah, it works. And you do have distinct experiences there, but it is essentially at the end of the day, it's a way of structuring
Mhm.
this one thing called the other world. Yeah. And even this one thing called the other world is an artificial distinction because most people are caught up in their day to day lives. And so we need to invent this separate category called the other world to help them to relate to this deeper spirit within existence. But really, the other world and this world, they're all the same place. In a way, the more we do this work, the more it's always with us.
Mhm.
Yeah. I can, if called upon to do some work, I can shift just like that. It's there, and I love it. Yeah, and I wrote a fantasy trilogy about it, um, which I think I'm calling Forbidden Beasts. About this, I call it shape shifting. Yeah, and I wrote a wolf turned up, when I was finishing my book on astrology, I thought, that's it. I've written 2 books now, medicine, world, and astrology. It goes, right, I want you to write a fantasy thing. And so I've never written fiction before. And so I spent my time of writing it thinking it was crap. And sometimes I would give up for a whole month. And then I would start to really suffer. I would drink too much. I would feel down. I'd feel depressed. And then as soon as I put pen to paper, so to speak, everything would be all right again. And that's the thing about the spirit. The spirit, at its deepest, at its most essential, is about what we have to do with our lives, our callings. The shamanic path, this is a calling. This is something we have to do. It's why we get ill if we don't do it. Just to jump back to my own shamanic illness, inverted commas, one experience I had with it was of the plug being pulled and that I wasn't in charge of my life. Yeah, I'd taken my life craft force for granted up until then, and it was for my will to use. And I realized that isn't how it works. It's something deeper that's calling the shots, and it's decided to pull the plug on my life force because it is feeling abused. Yeah. So, so it's a great teaching. Life is king. We're not king. Yeah. The warrior we all have needs to be in the service of that king. Yeah. It's not in control. That's why we have the sweat lodges to melt that warrior. But anyway, back to that calling. This is so important because we can't live an ordinary conventional life beyond a certain point. Yeah. Our primary calling is to something else. There is something else, and this can be difficult if you're married because there's something in you that is more important than that other person. Yeah. The other person, they might find that difficult, but they'll also love you for it. It's also why they're with you. It's a strange one. Yeah. So there is this thing that we have to do. That's what Jung said. He said, free will is doing gladly that which we have to do.
I like that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and with that, I wanna start wrapping it up. But I guess let people know the book comes out on the 3rd, February or March 3rd.
Yeah, it comes out tomorrow in the UK and it comes out on March the 3rd. Yeah. So if you pre-order it, what happens is that the day it comes out, all the pre-orders come out together and it boosts my rankings on Amazon. So that's really helpful to me. If you do it after that date, I will still give you a free astrology reading, providing you put a genuine rating on Amazon for it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that means you'll have to read it. But so
Mm.
that's how I work. I'm trying to sort of build my shop front.
And how do you want people to do that? Can they go to a website, send it to you in an email? How do you
Oh, where do they contact me? Well, you can put my email address there,
Okay.
or if they look up Barry Goddard Astrologer on Facebook, they can find me there. I don't really work through a website because
Okay.
people don't go there. So those are the usual ways. But also if they want to see more of me talking like this, go to my Chaos Shamanism YouTube channel, and I've got about 60 videos on there, short videos, so they're digestible.
Okay. I'll make sure all that's in the show notes for people too. But that way if they do pre-order, they can send you proof of the pre-order or however you wanna set it up
Yeah,
that
I'll
works
believe
out.
them. I'm very trusting.
Okay.
Can I talk about faith for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did mean to talk about that, or what we sometimes call trust. Use trust. I prefer the word faith because I think it's something that's so important. Is that faith in the spirit? The spirit is everything. Spirit is what gives the backbone and foundation to our existence, and it's intangible. And we have no conception of what it used to be for people. If you look even to a little village in England, yeah, there'll be this massive church there that probably took them 100 years to build. That is a measure of their faith. Yes, there was tyranny in it. Yes, there was dogmatism in it, but there was also faith. And you
Mhm.
see that in the beauty of it. Yeah. It speaks to a level of faith that we have no conception of. and um, and it builds over the generations. And so that's something we build on, and it's something we refined as adults, because as kids we have faith in life. We have faith that we're going to be looked after by our parents, and the next meal will come there, is will be there. We'll have clothes, we'll be taken care of. Yeah. And then we have to refine that. We need to lose the naivety in it, yeah, but still have faith. And the story of Job from the Old Testament is illustrative. Jung wrote a whole book called Answer to Job. I'm not quite sure what his thesis is, but the story is really good, because you see, Job was a man of faith. He had faith in God, and he was a rich man, and he had good reputation, lots of children. He had his health, everything went well. And Satan comes along and says to God, he goes, your guy Job, he's only got faith in you because life's going so well. And God goes, you want to bet? And Satan goes, yeah. So God doesn't come out of this too well, I have to say. But anyway, so I tried reading the Old Testament. There are great stories there, but after a certain point, I just could not take God anymore. I just thought, no, he's just too savage for me. It's not like that, yeah. But anyway, because it's good to know these stories in the Bible, because they are the stories of our culture, whether or not we're shamanic. They do speak to us. So they have a deep resonance. So anyway, he started taking things away from Job. He killed all his children, took his wealth away, took his reputation. He was terrible. And Job was suffering. Yeah. And he suffered. And it's a long story, but eventually he did keep his faith. Yeah. And the devil lost the bet. And what's illustrative to me in that story is that we have faith because we have faith. We don't have it because life is going well. We think, oh, the Great Spirit's looking after me, and because he's looking after me, I will have faith. I mean, there's a certain amount of truth in that, but there's something that comes out of, say, the Sundance, you're deeply suffering. But there in the suffering, you find the sheer profundity of faith. Yeah. So I wanted to say something about faith. Yeah. Okay, back over to you. I'll probably think of something else I want to say in a minute.
Oh, no, I mean, that's perfect. I was actually wrapping us up now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I feel like we need to have, like, another 2 hours just to continue this conversation. I'm enjoying it, don't get me wrong. I'm trying to
Yeah.
keep the time
Okay, I
concise.
won't leap in with anything.
But what I was gonna say is, I'll put your email, Facebook, and I'll put the YouTube channel in the show notes for people to find. And I can say too, your publicist sent me a pre-copy of the book, so I have read the book. I do think it's worth people picking up, and I hope they do. And then why not get a free astrology reading at the same time? I mean, why not?
Yes. Yes.
Like, see where you go with that. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate you coming on, Barry. I really had fun. This was a really good conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Okay.